Hi there, everybody, and welcome to this week's Art of Procurement. I'm the host and the founder of Art of Procurement, Philip Heitzen. It's safe to say that we're in some pretty unprecedented times around the world right now. Some of you will have been impacted by the spread of coronavirus more than others, but the likelihood is that it's going to be catching up with all of us pretty quickly. So here on Art of Procurement, we're going to be at your side to prepare for the unknown unknowns with practical advice on how you can mitigate some of its worst impact and turn your response into a competitive advantage. Now, we're going to be doing that through our procurement consulting business, through our learning and development platforms, but also, of course, through this podcast. And today, I'm honored to be joined on the show by my good friend, Jan Griffiths. So from growing up on a farm in Wales to getting the former Federal Reserve Chief, Janet Yellen, to dance on stage with her at ISM 2019, Jan has enjoyed a really diverse career across a number of executive leadership roles, primarily in the procurement space. In fact, in 2018, Jan traded in her role as CPO and the global head of supply chain management at a large global automotive tier 1 company to found Gravitas Detroit, where she helps leaders around the world engage, empower, and embolden their teams through workshops, through coaching, and through keynotes. So in today's podcast, we're going to discuss what's such an important topic right now, and that is how leaders can most effectively lead in a crisis. We're going to be talking about mindset. We're going to be talking about the day-to-day leadership. We're going to be talking about how to best and most effectively manage a remote team. And then, of course, the importance through these times of maintaining personal health. So, Jan, welcome to the show. And thanks, first of all, for clearing your time on a Sunday morning to chat with me today.
Absolutely, Phil. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I talked a little bit about your background in my introduction, and I have to ask you this question. It's a question I ask all of my guests, and that's, did you find procurement or did procurement find you?
Procurement found me, Phil. I did not wake up as a young farmer's daughter in Wales one morning and say, oh, I want to be in procurement. That did not happen. No. I was actually riding my horse across the field one day, and my mother called me in and said, hey, you have a phone call from a temp agency to work at a company called BorgWarner. I had no idea what they were and what they did. And they said, you're going to go and work in the purchasing department. I thought, wow, that's great. I have no idea what that is. And I walked onto that shop floor in Wales over 30 years ago and fell in love with manufacturing and the fact that I could be a part of it as, at that time, a purchasing assistant. Working for buyers and supporting buyers was exhilarating beyond belief.
There's something about being in because that was where I started in automotive. Again, listeners will know, I've said many times, I fell into the profession as well and had no idea what a buyer is. But there's something about being on the production floor of a manufacturing site, especially in automotive, and kind of that buzz of everything that's going on that draws you in. I think you see a direct line between the work that you do and the cars that ultimately are driving off the production line.
Absolutely. And at that point in time, BorgWarner was making transmissions for Jaguar and Saab. And there was something about the prestige of working on the Jaguar transmission line, and after I walked through the sort of assistant part of the role, I became an expediter. And the fact that I was responsible for ordering components for a Jaguar transmission, I thought that I had this job of tremendous responsibility and power.
So fast forward, a few years, and you've had a number of leadership roles within the procurement and within the supply chain space. And a CPO, a head of global supply chain management. I talked about that a little bit in my intro. Today, you are working and leading an organization that you founded called Gravitas Detroit. I wonder if you could just share, just very briefly, what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, of course. Well, there I was at my dream job, really, as CPO of a tier 1 automotive company, global team, everything going well. And then I realized that my true passion in life is leadership. It really is helping others perform and work better together, taking a team of people, helping them break through all of those barriers in their thinking, making sure that they understand the true potential that they have in a very positive, collaborative way. That's where my passion was and is today. And so I made the decision to leave the corporate world. I wasn't part of any sort of restructuring. It wasn't a decision I was forced to make. It's one that I made consciously without alcohol or drugs to leave my corporate income and take my income to zero overnight to launch Gravitas Detroit. And my business really has two parts. There's a lot of keynote speaking. I love being on stage, inspiring a group of people to really take on a stronger, more positive leadership role. And then the other part is working with corporate teams to help them perform better together. I do a lot of workshops on visions and objectives. And that's what I love to do. And so here I am today.
Yeah, it's funny how oftentimes people assume it was the same for me, that, it was a forced decision. Well, you started off but doing your own thing because, something had happened, not for you, but something just the economic cycle or whatever, where the role that you were doing wasn't available anymore at the company you worked for. And like you, I did the same. It was, everything was going fine. And I was in a job doing things that I never thought I'd have the opportunity to do, but there was just something missing. You can't stop that.
You're right. And then it's as if you feel like, as I just did, as if I have to put that out there, right? Because most people will make this decision because they had to go to plan B, right? And this is something that I made consciously, that this is what I want to do. I did not want to follow the typical trajectory of stay in this comfortable corporate role until retirement and then maybe do something like this. I wanted to do it now. My energy level is higher than it's probably ever been in my entire life. My passion for this is off the charts. The time is now. And so here we are.
So the reason why, I emailed you, so we're recording this on Sunday morning, March 15th, and I emailed you yesterday morning to say, hey, how about we do a pod together because of everything that's going on in the world right now. And, you very graciously at short notice said yes, was to talk about leading in a crisis. There's a lot of unknowns going on right now. And perhaps even in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, things will be a little bit clearer, or they may not be. That's, I guess, the point of a lot of these things being unknowns. And so I wanted to tap kind of your experience and also how you help the leaders that you support on a regular basis. What are some of the best ways that we can be most effective in times of crisis? And, if somebody's coming to you to ask you that question as a leader, what do I do first? I mean, what are some of the things that you recommend?
The first thing is the mindset, is to get your head in the right place. You can't lead others until you know how to lead yourself. And I find that these are, like you said, these are unprecedented times that we're in right now. And as I look back on my career when I've been in these types of situations where you don't really know what to do next, you're not going to have all the information. There's no playbook for this, right? And that's okay. But you have to go deep inside of yourself and pull out all of the authentic leadership traits that we all have within us and step up. And this can be a tremendously rewarding experience. It might be the biggest, the most challenging leadership experience of our lifetime. But the upside to that, it is without a doubt the most rewarding. And I'll give you an example. The reason why I can speak to this so passionately, several years ago, I worked for private equity, and the company ran out of money. I mean, we ran out of money. We couldn't pay suppliers. It was a terrible, terrible situation. And I know most of us have been there at one time or other, but this went on for a really long period of time. And everybody around me fell into the traditional pity party. Oh my gosh, the company's going to go into bankruptcy. We're going to close. This is terrible. This is gloom and doom. And there was a treasury department, and she was doing everything she could to keep it together. And she went on vacation. And the CFO, I'm not sure what happened to the CFO at the time, but he seemed to be in the background. So really, I looked around and I thought, I have to step up. I have to do this. If I don't do this, who knows what's going to happen? So I stepped up and I I put supply chain and procurement front and center and said, okay, we are going to lead through this. And people looked at me and thought, wow, so you're going to be stepping outside of your boundary and doing some things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. And yeah, that's right. But I came from a very good place. I was truly bound and determined to lead this company through this crisis. And we did. We had meetings every morning. I kept people positive, and I kept talking about there will be an end to this. I can't tell you exactly when it is. I can't give you a date, but we're going to get through it. And when we get through it, this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen. And we're going to go to lunch at this really nice restaurant. That's what's going to happen when we're through this.
Now, you didn't ask for permission to go and do that. So how did you manage kind of the political fallout, if you will, or the pushback, as you are, creating that, you're stepping up to create a role, but to fill a vacuum by the sounds of it. But there'll be a lot of people that are not necessarily looking upon that too positively. How do you manage that kind of the political side of that?
People were glad to see somebody step up and lead it. Nobody said a word. Nobody was offended. Nobody was upset. The opportunity for me really was when the Treasury person, when she went on vacation, there was very little information, right? So the person that provided visibility into the cash flow situation that we so desperately needed, really on an hour by hour basis at this point. So I had to step up, and I had to learn, all about the treasury and cash. I learned more about cash than I'd ever learned in my entire lifetime. And I took the risk because it just felt right. Yeah. And because I came from a good place, I wasn't trying to create an empire, or it wasn't a power move. It was a genuine, authentic, I want to help. I want to bring this whole company together so we can get through this. Then nobody really said anything. There wasn't any fallout that you might imagine. If you were to do that under normal circumstances, then yeah, of course, it would be a disaster, right? Yeah. You'd be stepping on people's toes. People would be all upset. Yeah.
Now, when you think about kind of the practical or the practicalities of doing something like that, from a leadership perspective, you have, as you're stepping up, taking kind of responsibility, taking control, there are those that are your peers and those above you who are looking for certain things. But what's critically important at this time is who you're leading, the folks who are looking up to you for direction. So I just wonder if you could share some of the practicalities of managing all of those around you, whether it's those above, those below, and how some of those actions can really set the tone for how you respond in these kind of times.
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, I think you have to acknowledge what's going on around you. Don't try to hide and run away from it, right? You cannot try, and you can't sugarcoat it. You just have to acknowledge it. And you have to acknowledge and validate the feelings and emotions that people have. There's fear, right? Particularly now in this situation. People are afraid. They're concerned about their health, their finances, their family, their job. I mean, the list goes on, right? This fear of working from home, all of that. You have to acknowledge it. But there's a difference in, you acknowledge it and move on. You don't acknowledge it and get into the pity party and start the spiral downward. It takes a strong leader to be able to do that, to acknowledge it and then say, okay, recognizing all of this, this is what we need to do as a team, right? We need to keep this business going. We need to keep the supply chain going. We need to keep supplier relationships intact. And this is how we're going to do it. And what I did was, once I went through that initial sort of setting of the stage type discussion, every morning, and consistency is key, every morning. It reminded me a little bit of, remember Hill Street Blues many, many years ago? I mean, it's a really, really old American.
I wish I could say that I did, Jan.
Oh my God, am I that old? Well, there was this thing, and he was in charge of the police in, I think it was San Francisco or something. I mean, I used to watch it in Wales, so it must be really, really old. And he used to get his people, all his people together, and he would say, "Be careful out there," or something like that, right? And I did a version of that, right? So we would say, okay, this is how much money we've got this morning. This is what we're going to do. These are the priorities. you deal with this, you take that. And then I was asking people to deal with suppliers they'd never dealt with before, because you couldn't follow the normal protocol of, well, this is your supplier, you do this and you do that, because there just wasn't enough people to go around. So I'd have people that worked in supplier quality, all of a sudden were dealing with suppliers managing cash. So people have to be prepared to step outside of their normal traditional roles to do something different in a crisis situation. And I remember looking at the quality guy, and I think I asked him to take the logistics company, and he looked at me, what? I said, just call him, just tell, explain the situation, ask him if they can deal with this kind of payment. And it's amazing because people learned that they had skills that they never thought they had before. And they step up, and then we would come back together again the following morning. And then we would say, okay, great. How did we do? How did this go? And it was such an incredible team bonding situation, albeit a crisis. Yeah. And it's because the leader keeps the team pumped and positive, and keeps them focused on the end game. And we are going to get through this, and we're in this together. That's what it's all about.
Now, one of the things that I'm interested in your perspective in is this idea of, we have to move quickly and decisively as leaders, but not like it seems like you're not in control. There's an expectation to do things. There'll be people outside of your realm, and perhaps it's leaders that you report into, or again, your peers on the leadership team, who are like looking at you to do something, but you don't want to do something just for the sake of doing something. So how do you manage that need to show movement with the need not to make reckless decisions for the sake of doing something?
Well, your question reminds me of somebody who might have the tendency to move into sort of command and control mode, right? Because in a crisis situation, there's this sort of knee-jerk reaction to say, okay, people, this is what we're going to do, right? I'm the boss, I'm the leader, I'm in charge. We're going to do this, this, and this. And because of particularly the situation that we're in today, because of the fear that we have, and the sense of panic that can come in very, very quickly, it's important not to move into command and control. We have to be sensitive. And I know there's probably people out there going, what is she talking about? Being sensitive? But we've got the role of the leader right now is to keep this team together. Yeah. And if you don't connect with people in that very, very deep emotional way, you're going to lose them. And there's a risk that people will sit at home and they'll be glued to the TV watching, there's another case in my county. Oh, this happened. Oh, they're shutting down this. And then you will be gripped by fear, and you will not be able to move. And it is up to the leader to make sure that doesn't happen. And sort of yelling at people and getting into the sort of super command and control mode is not the way to be. Having said that, you still have to have a leadership role. Yeah. And you have to be direct, but you have to be sensitive to the people that you have around you. It's your responsibility to bring calm to this chaos. That's one of the hallmarks of an authentic leader, is this ability to bring calm into this situation to keep us moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess something you said earlier about open communication, you still need to be a realist. But going back to the mindset, it's how you position the challenges, or perhaps you turn those into the opportunities that may come from managing the situation as it is today, and getting everybody moving in the right direction so they're not just paralyzed by it.
Yes. And there's tremendous opportunity, opportunity to learn new skills, opportunity to work from home for the first time. That's a big one for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, there's, for the work that we've done at Art of Procurement, one of the things that we've done is some training programs around risk, supply chain risk management. And one of the things that is pretty clear is that you can use your response to this crisis. While right now we're not necessarily thinking about it in this way, because we're just thinking about, okay, how do I react to the things that I don't necessarily know are coming? But how you react and respond can be a competitive advantage. It can position you, if times get more difficult from an economic perspective, to actually, if you've managed the crisis effectively up front, can make more cash available to make moves that your competitors can't do later, when things are starting to turn around again. And so look at it in that way. How can we use this to help our company become even stronger, as opposed to, oh my, I just got to keep the lights on?
Yeah, you're right. This is going to throw us out of our comfort zone, which, you can look at that as oh no, I'm going to be out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Or you can look at it as, hey, I'm going to be pushed out of my comfort zone. So guess what? You start to move into more of the creative realm and a creative mindset. And if you have a leader that can keep you looking forward and look at how, as you say, how you can turn this into a competitive advantage, then this can be one of the most rewarding experiences that we've ever gone through.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk a little bit about working from home, because you mentioned it there just a minute or two ago. We were talking a little bit about this off mic, that me personally, I've worked from home for probably 8-9 years, both on the corporate side as a consultant, then running my own business. And you kind of accept it as being, okay, everybody works from home, or everyone has the opportunity. And what's been clear to me in conversations that I've had, that was somewhat naive, in that there's some folks whose team don't have laptops. So what do you do when everybody is going to work from home and they only have desktop computers? So there's a lot of unknowns and indecision around how do we manage our teams? How do we lead our teams when they are going to be working from home, where they may traditionally have always been in the office environment? I just wonder if you could share some examples and tips that you have for leaders who are kind of confronted with that, where they've typically been in an office or an organization that has been very office-based.
Yes, and I think that when we use this term work from home, if you've worked from home for maybe one day a week or a day here and a day there, this is different. When you work from home full time, it's very different from working from home, just once in a while. Yeah. And this, again, I believe will be a great opportunity for leaders to connect with their people at a much deeper level, like they've never done before. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to be key to making remote working work. So I would say, first of all, consistency. Agree on what the meeting schedule is going to be and make sure that you stay with it. Yeah. And understand the communication protocol. How's that going to work? And keep the video cameras on. So anybody who's got tape on their video camera right now needs to rip it off. And I know that there's people out there that hate the video camera. They hate being on video conferences. But you have to take that off. You have to be able to see everybody, because you have to read the body language and feel that you're connected together. And that's the whole point of video conferencing. So you don't miss out on that face-to-face. So there can be no excuses and no exceptions. And the leader has to set the tone and say, this is the way that we're going to do it. And we've all had those situations where you've been on a video call and somebody doesn't have their camera on and you can hear them clicking in the background because they're really not paying attention. They're doing their email. You can't allow that to happen. You're in this. You need to be focused. You're in this together, cameras on. And for those people who are shy or uncomfortable about being on camera, just get over it, right? This is a crisis situation. Yeah. This is an opportunity for you to deal with that. And then schedule some informal time, because a lot of people who are not used to working from home, they'll miss the camaraderie of the office. And as you and I both know, a lot of the valuable time happens before and after meetings. Mm-hmm. Before the start and after the end of a meeting. So you've got to have that informal banter as well. So schedule that virtually. Schedule a virtual coffee talk where there's lunch. There's no real agenda, right? And then, make it fun. Talk about something, make somebody talk about something fun. Like what's the craziest thing they saw people taking off the shelves lately. We got this thing going on right now where everybody's buying toilet paper. Why? Maybe chat about that. Just something just to make it informal, just so people stay connected.
Yeah. One of the things that, I've done in the past, I'm in a small group. It's called a mastermind group. It's basically a lot of folks who get together and help each other, from an entrepreneurial perspective. And one of the things we do is we'll have a period of time, once every couple of weeks where everyone kind of just logs into a video call at the same time, but they keep on doing their work. But they can just go and ask a question of somebody else that's in the virtual room whenever they want. And it kind of recreates that office environment while you're not actually even getting there to talk about something specific, but everyone is just available if you need, just for that certain period of time. It's just another interesting way of trying to just encourage collaboration, and not to feel it's the mental side as well. So you don't feel like you're alone and you just sat at home behind your computer with nobody around and nobody to talk to.
Yes, and that sense of isolation, I think, will be very difficult for some people. And I know this personally. I felt it when I started working from home full time. And I work in 2 different co-working spaces, and I have a home office because I need that people interaction, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that this is going to impact me. I'll feel that sense of isolation, but I'm on video calls a lot. I'll make sure that I make those connections so I don't feel that.
I want to ask as well about the kind of other side. We talked about the practicalities of video conferencing, but I think the elephant in the room for a lot of leaders is trust. And that trust that your team will do the right thing.
This is a great opportunity for those leaders to really embrace and nurture that fear. Mm-hmm. And it is a fear, right? It's a fear that somehow they will look weak as a leader if somebody on the team is watching TV or doing what they're, it's not about that anymore. Surely we're beyond that now, right? It's about the work that you deliver and the value that you bring to the team. And I've seen some of these, I think you can get some software that tracks the amount of time that you're on the keyboard. Really? What is that? What is that doing? What are you going to do? Really? Are you going to have a camera on the guy in his office? Come on. Either you trust people or you don't. And if you don't trust the person, you need to have that conversation and address that either with yourself in your own head or with the person. This is a time, if you're feeling that you don't trust the people, this is a time to let that go. And really, in this situation, it's okay if the person wants to spend a little bit of time with their family during the day. They'll have more flexibility now on their schedule. Give them the latitude to make up a schedule that works for them and their family and the team in this situation. It's all okay.
Yeah, we're the majority of our teams will be very outcome based. And so long as those outcomes are being achieved, my personal perspective is the time that you do them isn't that important. Yes, you have commitments to the team and to the organization to be available and meeting at certain times, but with all the uncertainty, people are going to be having to take care of their families. They don't know what's going to come up from a day-to-day perspective. So flexibility around that. There was something I saw, a large global organization who had sent an email to all of their team members about expectations from working from home. And it included things like going into the internal communication channel, whatever the team uses, and telling their boss, I'm here and I'm not here. When are you on your computer, when you're not on your computer? Taking pictures of the surroundings so that they can see that you sat there at your office. I mean, to me, that kind of stuff is crazy. Like you said, if you don't trust your team, then now's not the time to start. Should I say, you've got bigger problems if you don't trust your team to do the right thing. But what you will learn is these are the people who can really step up for me, and these are the people that can't.
Exactly. You're going to see strengths in your team that perhaps you've never seen before, and they're going to come out front and center. And the other thing, too, I think it's really important for leaders to do, when we're in these corporate roles, it's so easy to push off those one-on-one meetings that we've been meaning to schedule with our team. This is a time to make sure that they are on the schedule and you stick with them. Never before has it been so important for you to have that one-on-one relationship with your people, because people are going to respond in different ways to this crisis. You'll have some people that will say, oh, I'm not really taking it seriously. I'm just going to soldier on. It's all going to be okay. And then you'll have others that will be paralyzed by fear and everything in the middle. And it's up to you as a leader to connect at a human level to keep this team together.
Empathy is so important right now.
Compassion and empathy, yes.
Something that can be easily forgotten, even by those leaders who are compassionate and empathetic, in the heat of the battle. And keeping that at the forefront of your mind is so important.
Yes, and I think the other thing that leaders are going to be challenged with too is this idea of vulnerability. There's a lot of discussion about vulnerability and showing, it's considered a strength if you show your vulnerability. Well, you got to be careful with that. There's a balance, right? Because along with vulnerability comes courage and strength. But as a leader in a crisis, this is not a time to say, oh God, I'm scared to death too. I don't know what to do. Right? This is not a time to be. Vulnerability doesn't mean sharing every single thought that you have, right? Vulnerability could be, in this instance, I understand how you're feeling. I have this going on too. However, this is how we're going to get through this together. That's when vulnerability and strength and courage all sort of play together. And it's going to be different for everyone as to how they bring this forward into their leadership role.
Now, the last area I just want to touch on is the area of personal health. And most of us who work in the office and who have gone to the office would have a commute time, and maybe it's an hour each way, maybe it's half an hour each way, whatever it is. So you now have some free time, which I think we would typically go and look at that and say, okay, I'm going to do an hour's extra of work. I'm going to go and do something else. Now, in these times, particularly something you were talking about to me before we started to record, was the importance of personal health.
Yeah, this idea of mindset, I'm really big on, because it sets up your day. How you set up your day is everything. When you get up in the morning, maybe you have an alarm clock, and then you go through your normal routine, and like you say, you drive to work, right? You have to have a routine. So you have to get up in the morning. You have to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to set my alarm for whatever time, 6 a.m. Or if you're like me, I'm a crazy person, it's 4:30 a.m. And then you cannot hit the snooze. Because you're making an excuse for yourself when you start your day. Psychologically, that's not the right mindset to have. So if you say you're going to get up at a certain time in the morning, get up, don't hit the snooze, start your day. Do something, do a task like making your bed, making coffee, something. Do not check email, do not check text messages, and do not turn on the TV, because it will take your mindset in a different direction. You haven't set up your day yet. You're just getting started. So give yourself that time in the morning to get your head into the right place. Then move into exercise. And it doesn't have to be an hour in the gym. It can be whatever works for you, but do something. If it's a walk, it could be some jumping jacks. Maybe you're fortunate enough when you have a gym at home. But do something to get the blood pumping through the system. There's so many health benefits associated with it, but it will prime your system. It'll get your energy level started, and it gets your head in the right place.
Yeah, I've been doing that just outside of this. I've talked on the pod before about the journey that I've had from a weight perspective, and I let that go again. I've really been getting back into that and doing it, I do it at 5:15 in the morning, getting up at 5:15 and doing that walk, doing that run, whatever it is. It truly is amazing the impact it has on your mindset for the rest of the day, from one where you go and at least from my personal experience, you're thinking about more negative thoughts to more positive thoughts. And it's also a great time when you have that. Again, it might not be exercise. It may be meditating. It's whatever works for you. But those are some really inspirational times as well that allow you to think clearly outside of all the distractions that will go on as soon as you sit down in front of your computer. Yeah,
it's so true. When I get up, I usually get up at 4:30, and I like the 5 a.m. Workout class, which of course I'm not doing now. So I have to change my routine. So I'm going to switch back to running. But then when I come back to the house, I sit down and I just spend a little bit of time. I'm not going to say it's meditating, but it's just quiet time to myself and my thoughts, thinking about things that I am grateful for around me. Mm-hmm. And then I really start to think about what is the one thing that I want to accomplish that day.
Yeah.
Knowing that, I have a list. We all have a list of to-dos, right? But what is the absolute one thing that I'm going to do that day? And then I start on that immediately. Because if I start doing the little tasks and getting into email right away, I'm lost for the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really helped me.
Yeah. It's very easy to get into that. As soon as you get focused on email and meetings and tasks and things to do, that's it.
Yes.
So, Jan, I know it's about time to wrap up. I want to, first of all, thank you so much for joining me again at such short notice. Such a super important topic right now. If listeners would like to connect with you, would like to find out a little bit more about you, where would be the best places for them to go?
You can reach me on LinkedIn, on my personal LinkedIn at Jan Griffiths, or through my company website, which is Gravitas Detroit.
Yeah.
And they're also welcome to listen to my podcast, Finding Gravitas.
Well, I'm going to link up to those in the show notes for today's episode. That's going to be at artofprocurement.com/episode 306. That's artofprocurement.com/episode 306. And I think for those of you that are listening to this as it's published, you've actually got a session later in the week where you're going to be taking questions and answers, I think on Friday. So I'm not sure if you have a page set up or anything like that, but perhaps LinkedIn is the best way to kind of find out a bit more about that.
Yeah, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I will be pushing it out on LinkedIn. I'm going to partner with the Mind Takeaway in Berlin because we want this to be very much a global conversation. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to open up a live session so people can ask questions. Maybe they're not comfortable going to their boss with a question, or they just want a forum to just talk through some of these things and share, good things, best practice. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to open that up on Friday morning.
Okay, great. And also, if you do have any questions as well around how to mitigate some of the risks from a procurement perspective, and to help turn the way that you are managing both your stakeholders and your suppliers into a competitive advantage that we talked about earlier, then please email us. We're at contact@artofprocurement.com. That's going to be in those show notes as well, because we're going to be answering your questions, throughout the blog, throughout the podcast, based on the questions that we received. Then Jan and I may get together again and do a quick Q&A. So please feel free to reach out. You can ask them anonymously, or ask us to keep them anonymous, but we're happy to help and help us all get through this, and again turn this into a positive, which we've talked about today, rather than a negative. So please don't forget that. Again, the show notes are going to be artofprocurement.com/episode 306. So one last time, Jan, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Phil. It is a time for procurement to step up and lead.
Hi there, I want to thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. You can check out all of our back catalogue at artofprocurement.com/podcast, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's show, I'd love if you would tell a peer, or perhaps go and rate and review by going to artofprocurement.com/review. Word of mouth really is the best way to help the podcast grow, and if you're able to do either one of those things, I would truly appreciate it.